Hello? Check 1, 2. Cool. John 6, 67 through 69 reads, "So Jesus said to the 12, 'Do you want to go away as well?' Simon Peter answered him, 'Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God.'" I was raised in the church by two godly parents, and I was saved at a young age. Even though I have been in the church for as long as I can remember, I first felt something wasn't right at about 10 years old. I obviously didn't understand the gospel the way I do now, but I had a nagging feeling that I wasn't saved. I knew that by default, I wasn't bound for heaven, and that the solution to this problem was Jesus. When I told my parents that I wanted to be baptized, they explained the gospel to me, then scheduled a meeting with our pastor at the time. He sat me down and explained again to make sure I understood. Then when he was confident that I did, he led me through the sinner's prayer, and I placed my trust in Jesus. He baptized me shortly after that meeting, and my life remained pretty steady and uneventful. I went to school, spent time with friends, and continued going to church, where I got involved in the youth group and the worship ministry. It was a stable, normal childhood. Things started to change when I got into high school, however. I was about 15 or 16 years old the first time I looked at pornography. This led to a decade-long addiction that would nearly destroy my relationship with God. I went to church on Sundays with the perfect Christian mask on. Someone would ask, "How's it going?" "Good," I'd reflexively blurt out without actually meaning it. "Do you have prayer requests?" would be the routine question in life group. "Nope," would be the routine answer with a smile. All good here. Meanwhile, I was struggling. Each day felt like a losing battle with these desires that I knew were wrong, but I couldn't stop. The Apostle Paul sums this up in Romans 7:19. "For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing." I was surrounded by people who had watched me grow up, who I knew loved and cared for me as if I was their own. I knew that they would understand and that I could be honest with them. Not even my own parents, at least, knew of this problem, knew exactly how much I was struggling. I allowed the shame at the evil I kept on doing to win out every time, keeping me from getting the support and accountability I desperately needed. The cycle I had settled into went something like this. I'd give in to temptation, feel bad, decide that was the last time, give in, feel bad, decide that was the last time, rinse and repeat. I'd go through periods, usually no more than a week or two, where I'd seem to finally be making progress. I'd come away from youth group retreats and conferences riding a spiritual high, thinking, this is it. This is the turning point I've been looking for. But of course, that never lasted, and I'd be right back to where I was before. My life carried on this way all through high school and past college into my mid-20s. During this period of time, I began wondering, am I really saved? Was I saved at one point, but now I've gone too far? If I'm not at that point yet, am I at the threshold? Slowly but surely, I drifted farther and farther away from God. It got harder and harder to run to him when I fell because I thought, there's no way I can go to him now. This last time has to have been the last straw. I knew God was both a righteous judge and a compassionate father, but over time I began losing sight of the latter. I wanted to be free, but I began to wonder if that was possible, and I thought that maybe if God wasn't already done with me, he would be soon. All of this came to a head one night before work. I was sitting in my car after having had a particularly bad day. I was so disgusted with myself, so ashamed and so afraid that God had either already written me off or was soon going to, that for a moment I wondered why I kept trying. I thought, I'm too far gone anyway, so I should walk away. The potential loss of fellowship and community as a result of leaving scared and saddened me, but I was feeling so hopeless that I would have been willing to deal with that. I briefly considered leaving the faith that I'd grown up in, not because I had stopped believing in God, but rather because I felt that he wouldn't want me around anymore. I felt that I'd somehow gone too far, but something held me back. In that critical moment, I felt God embracing me in a way that I never had before. Something my parents told me many times over the course of my childhood, usually when they were disciplining me over something I had done wrong, is that I was their son. They loved me, and nothing I did would ever change those two things. At that moment, it felt like God was saying the same thing. He could have let me take that fateful step. He would have been perfectly justified in letting me walk away to lie in the bed I had made. But he held me there, reminding me that his love and care for his people doesn't diminish depending on how much we fail. We can't ignore the fact that God is a righteous judge who has wrath towards sin, and we are all deserving of that wrath because we all sin. One of his most important qualities is that he's holy, and he calls us to live holy lives. I had no problem seeing that aspect of his character, but what I had lost sight of, and what he reminded me of that night, was the loving father who wanted his child to come home. Now, I wish that I could say that after this encounter, the whole situation did a complete 180, and I never struggled with porn or doubted my standing with God ever again. But I'd be lying. The addiction was still there, and it would still be a few years before I really began to see victory over it, thanks to an accountability partner and other resources that God gave me. I would still struggle with those old doubts and uncertainties, and that sin would still rear its ugly head, but never again did I consider walking away. Over time, I'd learned to run to our merciful God and remind myself of all of who he is. I'm able to get up and try again whenever I stumble because of his kindness. I don't have to live in my old habits or the despair that comes with them, but instead I'm free to live a life pleasing to him, albeit still imperfectly. It's unthinkable to me to not want a relationship with a God who is so faithful even when I've been anything but. He is so good that he sent his only son to pay for my crimes against him, all of them, for all time. What Peter says in that verse from John has resonated with me over the last several years in a way that it never did before. Lord, to whom shall we go? There's nowhere I can go but to Christ. There's nowhere I would ever want to go but to Christ. Thank you.